Time now for the quote of the week. But first, I better give you some context. Now, I chose this quote to illustrate how all the tough talk in response to the US tariff threats may make people feel better, but it's ineffective. And I'm not saying how you should feel about this tariff thing or anything. I'm just saying this is ineffective. But I also have to point out that I'm talking my own book when I say this because, since the outset of the tariff drama going on Money Talks, we've said that all that talk about we'll show them, we'll stand up to Donald Trump may make people feel better, but it's absolutely empty pandering because it would do nothing to advance Canada's position in practice. And by the way, I direct that statement to most of the political commentariat too, and some of them do good work in other areas, but not in this case. From day one, we stated that Americans, and certainly not the president, can care less about the impact of tariffs on Canada. When he says things like America first, he means it. Every premier, trade representative, federal politician should have been focusing instead on the impact of Americans on Americans. It's not hindsight. I mean, we got an early Angus Reid poll that made it clear that the vast majority of Americans did not support any measure that increased gas prices, for example. And now, as the automakers, the retailers, grocers, farmers start to push back against the Trump tariffs, well, they recognize, the negative impact of the tariffs on their costs. Well, as they start to push back, the president is delaying some tariffs. So we'll see where that ends up. But on U.S. talk shows, in the related trade-related meetings, at every opportunity, we should have been talking about who the U.S. tariff increase costs. They cost Americans in terms of their cost of living and the cost of doing business. And that brings me to the quote of the week. And it's in response by the U.S. Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, to Doug Ford's tough talk about putting a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the U.S., which just hours later, he announced, no, he wasn't going to do that. That's after President Trump responded. That's where all the tough talk gets us. Nowhere. In quotes. He needed to break some guy in Ontario who said he was going to tax American energy 25%. The President of the United States in the White House says, oh, no, you won't, and breaks him. Breaks him in what? By a tweet and a truth? And you think that's chaotic? You know what I think that is? I think that is, thank God we have a president who's taking care of us. If you were in one of those states and you thought your energy prices were about to go up 25%, and you said, where's the president? And all of a sudden, he came down like thunder to make that end. You'd say, cool, I'm glad that's the kind of White House we've got. That's what we have. Now, the point there isn't whether you agree or disagree. It's to recognize the situation that we're in. It's to be practical and realistic about what will be effective in dealing with the Trump presidency. And as I said, it's reminding Americans and their businesses how much these tariffs will cost them.